Hello, welcome back, everybody, to another year of the Sunday Podcast.
I'm Ollie Lam.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
Back in 2025 for our 5th season. You can expect more of this.
He's claiming that he was ill before the semi-final, whatever. But, you know, I just feel like at that point he was just looking for attention.
And some of this.
You normally say, no human is limited. So I can't limit myself, or I can't just say I can do.
As well as event coverage around all the major races on the UK circuit.
And if you're a fan of the pod, please give us a rating and review on your preferred podcast streaming service.
And if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news, give us a follow on Instagram at Sunday Podcast.
As always, thanks for listening. See you next time. And we hope you enjoyed the episode.
Okay, guys, welcome back. 1 week late, but George Couttie is here. Obviously, after we had Rory and Andy last week to talk about that run in Valencia. But yeah, I think pretty good timing, mate, from us as always. George has just popped to 7:52 out in Virginia Tech in his indoor opener. So looking good ahead of the NCAAs as well.
Mate, and I think he'll be racing again this weekend. I know this is quite a big weekend for the NCAAs to get those qualifying marks before they go into conference champs and stuff in a couple of weeks. So yeah, see what he can do as well. We quickly touched upon, didn't we, if he would consider representing GB indoors. He's been given the straight up no from Coach Ben Thomas. But yeah, for your things, all Virginia Tech and Ben Thomas and George Couttie, probably the hottest up and comer in the UK right now. Is that fair to say?
I think it is, mate. And it was interesting, even just, obviously, we did some research for the pod, but even just looking at that 7:52 prior to recording this, just checking the results, didn't even realise, I've kind of forgotten how, slow some of his PBs are. And obviously that's what happens at that age, but how quick he's run now, you sort of forget that, not how quick he's run, but how well he's done on the NCAA Cross. You kind of forget that just a couple of years ago, he's an 8:27 guy.
Yeah. And outside 14 minutes and stuff,
Yeah.
A meteoric rise. And yeah, he definitely gives us an insight on what the next few months may hold as well, which is super exciting. So we'll let you enjoy Couttie. A teeny bit of news. We're going to do a full Bucks preview early week after we review regional champs and stuff, because that gives us a good indication of who's in shape heading into National Cross. There's also England representative meet going on in Belgium this weekend as well, so we'll break that down, and a few indoor meets as well. So, but Chariot has moved to Lauras's training group with Lewandowski, the head coach there. So that is quite interesting, Chariot to move across to those guys, and that just means that group is even stronger. Already had Lauras and Nilsson, and now they've got Chariot as a 1500 as a mid-distance group. It's insane. It's kind of, it's on a par with, some of the setups that I guess Cole Hocker and Couttie, and the fact that they can work in with those Virginia Tech guys have a supreme setup as well. But looks like more pros are looking to train together. And I think this is a reason why the depth is just improving so much as well. While we're seeing, a lot more people who may have been 334 people and sort of on the outskirts a bit, and now breaking through and running 331, 330 because they are surrounding themselves with people who are reaching those marks.
It's interesting, mate. And even just then, you obviously mentioning kind of Cole Hocker and Couttie's group as a good setup. And obviously it is a great setup. And Couttie obviously talks about the type of training as well. But really, it's only Hocker is the only one who's
Coutttie.
Don't get me wrong. He's gonna pop off. He's gonna run quick, but he's not proved it on the world stage at all.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's just a lot of guys who can run fast. And the same. A lot of women. It's the same with the M11. You've just got a lot of people who can run fast, all in the same group. And look, if you're training with people who are running world class times, and you've got a bit of talent about you, you've got a bit of pedigree, you're probably not going to be too far away from them. Yeah, you might not reach those supreme heights of, only one person can go and win the World Champs in Olympic Games, but you are going to get bloody good. And I think that is a result of, I think the depth is a result of a lot more athletes training together. We see a lot more training camps where people are hopping in with each other now. I think there has been a change in the way kind of pros work with each other. It certainly used to be a little bit more divided. But that's one move. Well, it's Laura Muir to Steve Crown. She's not seeking out a big group there. But that is quite a bit of news. And I guess, when you look at it, she very much wants to stay in the UK. We can only presume. And I guess, another athlete who ran well under Steve Bernard, to be fair. But maybe she looks at it and she thinks, could I have, especially looking at what Georgia Bell was able to achieve? Yeah, was Steve Vernon the man to take her to an Olympic medal? I mean, she still went around a PB, still had a very successful season, but yeah, obviously has moved on and switching to cram.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. Like, we're hoping to obviously speak to Steve at some point in the next few months about it, because obviously I'm sure it was linked in with his kind of BA role that he had as well. And so I don't know if coming out of that then influenced some factors as well. So hopefully he'll be able to talk about some of that stuff with us at some point. But we will see.
And on that role, obviously British Athletics is still recruiting. My long shot of Mark Rowland to be head of endurance or whatever that role is, world-class endurance program, could still stand. Was that part of the reason he sort of, he knew that role was coming up? Part of the reason he went for the Edinburgh job as well?
Yeah,
we'll see. Me just spreading rumors again, but yeah, mate. So obviously, that's big news. And I guess they know each other very well. Laura Waitman's involved. It looks, happy families. Cheptegei announced to race in Tokyo in the marathon, and this is a whole discussion for another day, which I think we'll touch on, because it's not sad, but we've always said we're getting athletes in their prime, in their sort of mid to late 20s, and even Kip Limo's 23. They're putting all their eggs in the marathon basket. And we look at the 10,000, the 5,000, how hard it is to qualify on the track and stuff. But a lot of Africans are just, I think it's going to open the door. Already Jakob is dominating the 5,000. I think the 10,000 could be wide open, because a lot of good Africans are just completely just not shutting the door, but seem to be moving up so early. Like Kip Limo to be 23 and moving up, you would never have seen that 10 years ago. Anyway, Cheptegei's obviously debuting as well.
He's already had a pretty stellar career on the track, right? I think that's the thing with some of these guys, like particularly Cheptegei. I mean, he has, I guess. But I mean, there's domination though, right? Like Farah went for as long as he could on the track, like literally. I don't think these athletes are capable of doing it.
And so did Wakili, and until they couldn't compete, Kipchoge was the same, no more. And I think these athletes are still competing, but
yeah. But I think they're recognizing that they're not going to be able to do that, because the standard is so high. To stay on top is, I think, even harder. And I just think they recognize they're not going to be able to do that. And also, I think the kind of old tradition of almost dominating on the track for years into your 30s and then thinking, I'm going to be a world-class marathoner. The way marathon running has popped off, you don't have time to go there at 34 and then become world-class in the marathon. You've got to go there early, because the standard's so hot that if you don't, you're going to get left behind and you're not going to be running 2:01, which is what it takes.
Yeah. I just feel like maybe I'm just biased here, but if I was a runner, I would much rather go to a global championships every year and compete for a medal than go to a world marathon major. And maybe you get second, maybe you get third, maybe you win the odd one, but they don't have the same wow, then, literally going and being a world champion, or, a lot of them turn up for the Olympics. But
yeah, I think, mate, that's me and you, like, and probably a lot of people listening as well, like classically growing up, like loving track and field. Whereas I do think nowadays running is almost the popular one. Like the marathon gets more of a spotlight than the track half the time, particularly if you're running 10Ks, right? You're not running 100.
It does. Yeah, I think the group, we mentioned on the groups on this sort of like mid-distance / 5K scene, and how the pros are all linking up and working together a bit more than they ever used to. I think in the marathon in these African countries, I think there is a lot of athletes who are training for marathons. And I mean, hey, the Dubai Marathon, mate, Ethiopia had 1 to 10 in both the men's and women's race. Like, ridiculous. There wasn't a single person from another nation who broke in top 10. And so I think the groups are just, you join one of these. It's like if you're NN, right, and you go be coached by Patrick Sang, you join that group. Guess what? They're in a 16-week build, and if you don't like it, then get the hell out of here, because everyone in this group is doing a marathon. And I think that's the way that these kind of African groups are going, instead of those very exclusive training camps that the governing bodies used to put on back in the day with Ethiopia and Kenya. So anyway, mate, that's a story for another day. And just finally, one more piece of news. Josh Kerr signed a new contract with Brooks till 2034, 9 years away.
Makes sense though, right? He is the first and only track athlete they've had in a long time. I guess they had Nick Simmons for years, right? And obviously he gave him a great return on their investment in terms of the content he pushed out, and of course a great runner as well, like with his medals on the world stage. But they're not getting bigger than Kerr, so you've got to keep him.
Yeah,
they got to do whatever it takes to keep him if they want to have a presence in track and field.
Yeah. I don't think anyone knows the details. At least we haven't seen the details yet. But that is just, I was impressed. I thought, wow, 9 years. That is, 2028, 2032. They're going to come and go. He's still going to have 2 years left on his contract. Who knows what the details are and whether there's clauses in it, all sorts. But I mean, yeah, he's sitting cushy. So good on him. And I think that's what track runners are worth. These big contracts. But it's high risk for Brooks, because I think it'll be a push. I mean, I'll be surprised if he medals or, is kind of in and around that level in 2028. And just the nature of the sport, there's just so much depth. You have one bad year, there's 10 guys running 329, 330.
Yeah. And speaking of stepping up to the marathon, it's not like Kerr's going to then go run on the road. Right? Like he's going to be done.
When we spoke to him, obviously, when he was in college, there were big plans. It was always Paris was the plan. He had these steps and he had a really long-term plan with a lot of detail. And I wonder if there is a long-term plan for the 5K, or whether he thinks he could step up to the 5K. I mean, we've seen what he can do over 3,000 indoors. He is bloody good. And, even though he might not be a traditional 5K runner, he'll work at it, I'm sure. Like, he's proven that when he puts his mind to something and just dedicates everything to it, he can be the best in the world. So I wonder if there is plans for that, but I thought that was crazy.
What it does mean, though, is that, like you say, I think the security for him means he is going to be focused. Not that he's not going to be focused purely on training anyway, because that's just the sort of guy he is. But like when you got that type of contract, and like you say, if there's no like stupid clauses in there, you can just take that long-term approach and think, right, I'm safe. I'm a professional athlete for 9 years.
Sometimes it's a bad thing though, but yeah.
But you know what I mean, right? Like someone like Kerr, I think, thrives on being able to just prepare in exactly the way he wants to. Doesn't have to race. He could just not race, and we know he's been known to do that at times.
Yeah, I think he'll know right now what he wants to do in 2028 and what he wants to do in 2032 as well. He'll know where he's going and kind of what his plans are. But you're right. Yeah, sometimes these long contracts can be a negative. I think I remember a few Brits signing after 2012. They signed like 8-year deals or something. Ross Murray was on a big deal. Saji, people like that. But yeah, there's a lot going on in the world, actually. There's a load more sort of, I guess, if you want to call them transfers, not really transfers, but athletes signing with new brands.
Should have a real window, really. We could be doing deadline day till midnight.
It was basically, it's quite cool in a way, because I feel like now more than ever, and I don't know if, 4 years ago, COVID messed a lot of things up, didn't it, in that Olympic cycle. And then you think back to kind of like 2016 when it was that kind of hard cold on the last Olympic cycle. But yeah, it does feel like it is a bit of a transfer window going on. I mean, there's athletes moving all over the place.
Yeah. But I guess, from Josh Kerr back over to George Couttie, who he could be the next big Brit to come out of the NCAA. So we'll see how he gets on this year, and then obviously in the next few years as well. But enjoy his episode, and we'll catch you guys on Monday with a weekend roundup as well. Thanks for listening as always. Okay, great. First off, George, welcome to the podcast, mate. Great to have you on. How you doing? Christmas just been and gone. You back in the US now?
Yeah, flew back on the 2nd, so I've been here for a couple of days. Yeah, it's going really well, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. How's your time at home? How long did you get?
I got quite a while because I came back for Euros, so I was there for a good month before coming back. I know a lot of my friends only got 10 days at home, but I was quite happy to be back. I was quite sick of being at home.
What is it you didn't like about being at home, man?
I prefer the training's so much easier here, especially and having a group around you, which is nice. So I was doing everything on my own at home, and plus the weather here is normally nicer, but it's not at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll get into, but that Ben Thomas training is fair to say it's just hard to execute solo.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And mate, on some of that training, like we got to ask you, Christmas traditions, anything go down on Christmas Day? You one of those that likes to get out for 3 runs on Christmas Day just to show how hard you want it, or are you just
I'm
out?
not 3 runs on Christmas Day. Just 1 run on Christmas Day. It was in the training plan, so it wasn't too bad. It was quite nice, just an easy run. So I actually quite enjoyed my Christmas Day run. Nothing too bad. Christmas Eve was a bit rough though. I had a session on Christmas Eve that was quite hard, but other than that, it's pretty chill.
Can you say that's what it was?
It was like a hill session, so we just had like 100, 200, 300, 400 times 2 hill reps with 100 walk back. Then 2 times 1K hill, and then a bit of a comfy steady afterwards, and then like 5 kilometer cool down.
Not easy to find a hill which offers that level of a hill session, you know?
Yeah, it is very difficult to find anything. Everything we do is all based on what we have here. So going home, you've got to try and find stuff that you have here. So I remember when I first got home, I went out and like trying to scout my area for things that I could use that are like somewhat relatable to what we have here. But I made it work. So I was actually quite happy with the like trails and stuff that I found that actually provided quite good hill stuff.
Yeah, good on you. I'm intrigued. If you went to Ben and you said, look, man, I just haven't got these facilities, I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, what would his response be?
Do it the best you can, probably.
Fair. Yeah.
I've never bothered to ask the question. So I think I just try and find it, do it the best you can. But most of it's like you can improvise based on what you have. Like, so a lot of the stuff we usually have track, like bits of track work at the end of every session. So I just have to find the flattest piece of road I can to do that. And then sometimes I have to cut a 400 down to maybe a 300 just because I just can't find a 400 flat piece of road. So I just do a 300 instead. It's just kind of, you just got to kind of make do with what you're given.
Yeah. And obviously, like we said already, mate, and I think a lot of people know, Ben Thomas's training is I guess quite different to your traditional distance runners winter, for example. We just wanted to ask you, like, when did you kind of first become aware of Ben Thomas? Like, how much were you researching that before you went out over to the US?
Honestly, I had absolutely no idea who he was for like a long time. I remember obviously transferring from Charleston. I was looking at schools, and I'd had a message from Virginia Tech, and I'd raced there. Like my first ever race in the US was here over Cross, and I was like, I kind of was looking at it, but I wasn't too interested. I wanted to kind of go somewhere else. Obviously, it was quite close to where I already was. But as a kid, like when I first wanted to move to America, obviously I was watching Cooper and Cole just like dominate the NCAA. Obviously, I had no idea who their coach was. And then one of my friends like mentioned that he used to coach them and they train here. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll give that a look into. So I did my research and was like, okay, maybe I should give this a shot. So I did. And yeah, it works out perfectly.
Man, that's fascinating. But you did want to go out to, into the collegiate system. Just give us a breakdown of how that looks, going to a different school, then making that transfer. What was your last year of school like before you went out there, etc.?
My last year of school was good. I just obviously trying to pass my A levels, but obviously before like coming to America, I was actually like dead set on joining the army. I'd done all my basic training and was like pretty much going to go in at the age of 16 until I got the offer from like an agent of Nathan Gillis, and I was like, oh, this kind of looks cool. Maybe I'll give this a go. And I dropped out like 2 weeks before joining the army and applied like last minute for sixth form to get in. And I did, and obviously did my 2 years of sixth form. And in those 2 years, I kind of improved massively in my running, went from like being like very, very average runner to being pretty good. And then obviously since then, coming out to America first year, I improved loads. And then now this year I've improved even more. And it seems like it's kind of weird. Everyone was like, oh, it's probably going to slow down. And it just hasn't so far. I just keep making even bigger jumps every single year. So it's pretty crazy the last like 4 years.
Yeah. We got to give Nathan Gillis a bit of a shout out and his agency, because if it wasn't for him, it sounds like you wouldn't be where you are, right now.
I absolutely would not. And I think he knows that. I give him massive props. He's helped me massively, even with transferring here. He helps me all the time. He's done me massive favors with everything. And yeah, I definitely would not be. I'd probably be in the army right now, not running at all.
Wow.
If it wasn't for him messaging me.
Wait, what's this company called again? So
it's called Olympic Sports Scholarships.
That's it. Yeah. And what's that? He messaged you in sixth form and said, pre-sixth form, you're doing GCSEs at this point.
But he actually messaged me when I was in year 10 after I'd ran Liverpool cross country. And I thought it was a scam. I was like, so I just didn't reply. And then he messaged me again the next year. So I was like, I went to my mum. I was like, is this real? My mum was like, I have no idea. So I asked my coach at the time. I was like, what's this about? And she goes, no, that's real. And I was like, I'd always wanted to travel. And I was like, well, I can always join the army, but going out to America is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I thought, like, I might as well just go for it. And that's what I did.
That's unique.
Cool story, man. Is that something that are you looking to like go into the army, like maybe when your running's done? Is that something you'd go back to later on?
I don't know. It all depends. At the moment, I'm just obviously focusing on my running. I think I definitely do have like a couple of ideas and things that I would like to do maybe after running, but nothing like set in stone. I have no idea yet. Obviously, it's sort of massive. Like, it's a long way away, but there's always a thing that I'd be interested in because I've had family go for it, and I just kind of, I'm a very active person, so I wouldn't mind like going into the army. I think it'd be really good fun. So
yeah, absolutely, man. And look, just looking at kind of, you mentioned those improvements. Like, you won English schools cross country, and obviously you've gone out to America, but I think it's fair to say you've obviously then transferred on. It's not like you win English schools and you get to go to whichever school you want. Like your Oregons aren't necessarily chasing you. What does that say about the NCAA right now?
I think NCAA is like, it's unbelievable competition. It's insane how difficult and how deep the NCAA is. Like, if you just look at the cross country results, the amount of people running sub 30 on a pretty tough cross country course is mental. So it's like, I remember when I was transferring from Charleston, and I was like, I'd done pretty well in Division 2. I was like nearly a sub 4 miler. I'd obviously competed with Great Britain, and I was getting like no offers from like the big schools, like Oregon, no, NAU, no, nothing. So it just shows that they just have so many kids who are just like so good, and it's impossible to try and, especially with these new rules with all like the roster limits, and like they're more bringing in kids now that have like that are going to provide instant like benefit to the team, and less of like this kid has a bit of upside that maybe in 2 years he's going to be really, really good. A lot of these teams, especially the SEC teams with 10 roster spots, they just can't afford to take that risk.
This is what fascinates me about you and how you ended up at Virginia Tech. So, you talk about how difficult it was, no kind of bigger schools are looking at you. How does that Virginia Tech transfer happen? And how does kind of Ben Thomas take a little bit of a chance? Because what were you, a 346 guy when you went over there?
Yeah, I'd run 346. I'd run a 401 mile, like start of indoors. I know I'd run at Tech, like I said previously, and I'd won their cross country meet and broken their course record pretty like as my first race in America. So they definitely kind of like, I think that definitely helped, obviously having raced there and got a bit of notice kind of from that. And then obviously I had a lot of conversations with Ben over the phone and just kind of explained to him where I'd come from, like with my running. I've been like not actually been doing it properly for that long, and obviously only the last 2 years really training properly, and still then being like a very low mileage runner. And he was probably one of the only, he was the only coach that I actually spoke to that kind of asked about what I was doing with my running, and kind of he asked for videos. Like, I feel like that was another reason why I chose to come here, is he was interested in like to see if I had any potential and not just what I could do right now.
Wow. And you might not know the answer to this, but is he like that with everyone? Like, do you kind of get wins? Like, is he kind of excited about everyone and like, oh, I wonder what they're doing? Because he backs himself to transfer you from X to, a superstar.
100%. I remember like having phone calls, and he'd be telling me who we've got coming in. He'd be like, oh, we're really excited about this person coming in. Like, they run this time now, but I think like I was training with them at Oregon. They're really good. So yeah, he's definitely like that with everyone. And I think he believes in every single one of the people on the team, which is really, really nice. And I guess that gives us a lot of confidence as a team coming into pretty much any races.
And then look, when you transfer and come in, how long does that transition to Ben Thomas style training take? Is it straight in at the deep end, or were you gradually kind of inducted to that?
Well, I was gradually, because of I was at World Champs, so I was in like 2 weeks later than everyone else, and so I didn't race either of the first 2 races, and I didn't even train for like the first 2 weeks properly. I did no sessions. I was just easy running, kind of dipping in and out, and like it was a very gradual build up into the Ben Thomas training, which was, I think, really helped. Obviously with the training being so different to anything I've ever done before, and like learning how to cross train as well, considering I've done absolutely none of that ever. Never really been to the gym until coming here. like never done anything other than actually running. So it definitely was like a difference. And then also the build up in mileage as well was new to me. So I moved up a little bit in mileage this year as well. So it was all kind of gradual, which is really good. I think helped me massively.
It's just such a holistic program. And yeah, you've already mentioned a little bit how difficult it is to execute when you are not in that exact setup. Is that like, I'm just thinking like forward here a little bit. Is that like one of the, I guess there is very few drawbacks, if any drawbacks to his training philosophy and his program. But the one drawback is you kind of do need a lot of resources in order to execute it. Or
I wouldn't say it was a drawback, just because I think you can find these places. Obviously, they're not going to be exact replicas of what we have here, but you can always kind of find stuff that will suit. Again, I'm quite lucky living in the countryside back home, so I've got quite a few places. But I think there's always places, like even when I went to my grandparents for Christmas, and I found places around there that I could do everything. So I didn't actually find it. I just thought the one problem was just kind of finding the areas. But once there is places to do all these things. So I feel like you can get everything done. Yeah. The one things that I missed out were just like some of the cross training things over Christmas, considering there was no gyms or pools open. So other than that, when everything's open, you can get everything done.
What strikes me though is it's just so mentally stimulating to do that program. I mean, you must constantly be like, blimey, what's next? And you're never like getting bored.
Yeah. I know when they send the training plans out each week, it's just like a puzzle trying to figure out what we're actually doing. I know back home I was having to message my friends like, oh, what are we doing this week? I'm a bit confused. But yeah, it's always different, which is it's really enjoyable. I love the training. I think it's great. And it worked so well. Or at least for me, like I know a lot of people when coming in were like, oh, you might take a year or two to like adjust to the new training, stuff like that. And I've just not had that problem. Like, it seemed to just click straight away.
Yeah, can you talk a bit more specifically about what those changes actually have been? Because obviously you mentioned like the step up in mileage, and obviously a lot of people will know some of Ben Thomas's types of workout, but can you give a bit of an example maybe into the changes in your kind of program leading into a cross country season?
Yeah, so obviously up my mileage by like 20 kilometers this cross country season, and then again adding in cross training as well, which I've never done. So we do a lot of swimming, a lot of biking, supplemental, and then double days, which I'd never really done, and now I double pretty much every day. But it's mostly like either really small runs or cross training, so they're not like hard doubles. There's no double threshold or anything. And then the workouts, the difference I'd say is just the variety in what we do. We do like everything in one workout. We'll have like a longer reps on the cross country course, and we'll come back to the track, have some short reps, and then some sprints. And it's just like swapping over terrain all the time. And we'll go from hills to the track and back to hills, stuff like that. It's like, it's all over the place. It's just crazy.
Just so robust. Like you said, just being able to tick so many bases, and clearly that worked. Let's get into this NCAA season a little bit, because I think at the NCAA Cross, obviously you finished 14th. You had everyone ahead of you is basically a sub 13:20 runner. A couple guys going around 7:30 for 3,000. A few days later, did you get an inkling you were going to be in that sort of shape and deliver that sort of performance?
Like throughout the season, yeah. But if you told me like when I came in, like you're going to come 14th in NCAA, I said, you're absolutely joking. Like I remember going to our first race at UVA and like looking at the competition. Obviously there weren't too many big schools, but we had Wake and UVA, which obviously were two pretty big schools. And I remember coming, I think came third in that, and I was behind Gary and Luke Twalt. And I remember finishing, and like I beat my PB by like 30 seconds in the 8K. And I was not expecting that at all, because I'd been training for like a week or two. And I was like, okay, I was like, wow, this is going to be a really good season if I can keep this going, or just any type of this going. And then obviously each race seemed to get better. It was like 6 for ACCs. And obviously I won my regionals. And then after regionals, I was like, yeah, like obviously All-American was definitely what I wanted, but I wanted top 20, and I was definitely pushing for top 10, but obviously like super happy with 14th.
Absolutely. I think we got to give some credit, I guess, to the program you were on previously, because obviously you've had massive improvements under Ben and like you say, really adjusted to that training. But the year you've had previous must have kind of built you right up ready for this cross season as well.
Yeah. So the massive props to like both my like two coaches. So my coach from back home, Joanne Day, she's been my coach like pretty much since I started running, and she's coached George Mills, and she's honestly the most. She's done like everything for me. She's amazing. I remember last year I went home early from Charleston, and I was coached by her again this summer. So she was massive. And then Nick Bias from Charleston did a great job and was like really helpful with all my training and just like not pushing me too hard, which I think I've got massive benefits from. All my coaches were very much like not going to push me to my absolute limits straight away and peak me as a 19, 20-year-old and be more of a, I want to be competitive as a senior, not as a junior. That's where it matters, is racing as a senior.
Yeah, you had a super son. I think the first time I sort of saw you and was like, oh, this guy looks legit, and I guess you come onto people's radar was British Champs. Is that fair? Was that like one of your like, okay, I feel like I'm arriving at a top level now?
Yeah, well, I had a good run at Watford. I ran like 340, and I'd beaten some pretty decent people in that race, and was like, okay, this is pretty good. And I remember coming into British Champs, I was like, I'm gonna go all out, and it's a bonus if I make the final. I definitely before the race thought, yeah, I can definitely make this final. It was never gonna be guaranteed. It was gonna be very, very hard. So I remember making that final. I was over the moon. That was definitely the biggest like moment at that time in my career so far.
And then I just want to talk, because you are one of the few people who went out to that World Juniors, and how was that as an experience?
It was an amazing experience. Loved it. Like I'd been to Europeans the year before, but this was great. I really enjoyed running the 1500 there. I enjoy the 1500 a bit more than I do the 5K. And the one problem was just like we got food poisoning. So after my heats, I was pretty ill throughout being there. And I wasn't the only one. There was quite a few people who were like throwing up and just feeling pretty under the weather for like multiple days before their final. So yeah, it was I know a couple of the 800 guys, a couple of 3K guys were feeling really ill. So it kind of messed up a couple of people's races, but it was still an amazing experience and was happy to be there.
Definitely. I think I want to ask you the question, after that NCAA result, was it always in the plan to do Euro Cross? Because was it tempting? I mean, was this even discussed? Yeah, because obviously that Boston meet in December is just getting so big now, and it's just an easy place coming off the back of the NCAAs to bank your qualifying times, and then you can prepare a little bit more leisurely for the championships. Was there a decision, a conversation there, or was it always Eurocross?
So we never actually do Boston, and we were never going to do Boston. So we were never going to have another race. And I was like 50-50. I was like, maybe. And my friends are like, no, you really like, my European friends are like, you should definitely do it. So I had the conversation with his coach. I was like, oh, like I'd like to see if I could give this a go. And he was like, yeah. He was asking how far it is, and obviously it was only being like 4.8K or whatever. He was like, if it was any further, like more 8K, he'd have said no. But because it was only it was only a kind of a small race, he said it's not going to affect me too much. So it was kind of just like, yeah, I ran really well. And he was like, yeah, you might as well. So put my name down, and obviously was very lucky to get picked. Obviously, I'd literally never made the team before. I've tried like 2 years in a row at Liverpool and not even been close both times. So yeah, this year I was happy to finally make it. And it was my last race as an under 20. I think that was the main reason of me really wanting to do it, was I'd not really done anything on the European and world stage. I'd been to Euros, been to Worlds, and not really done anything at either of them. So I really wanted to kind of like prove that I knew I could. And I wanted to kind of prove that before moving up into the under 23s.
Yeah, and like you say, like fantastic race you had at Eurocross, but I guess, well, you might upset a few people here, but what's the harder performance, mate? What's the better performance? Is it that NCAA run, or is it silver at Eurocross as an under 20?
I think they're just as good as each other, only because they're just completely different. I'd say the 14th at NCAAs was better in the sense of like it's a better finish and it's a bigger achievement, but being that close to Laros and pushing him to his limits in a European final again is also such a big achievement. But I think if it wasn't him and it was someone else, then it wouldn't have meant as much.
I'm going to ask you about Laros and that straight. I think you delivered one of the most exciting races of the champs, actually, that under 20 men's, and you and Laros kicking down. Is there a bit of psychology and intimidation? Like, do you think in that home straight, like, oh boy, this guy's a 329, 330 runner? Are you thinking about that when you line up and when you're on that straight? Like, is there a little bit of mentality involved in the kick, or was it literally gave it everything, and you no regrets.
I didn't think about that. I always backed myself in the kick, and I believe still now that I will beat anyone in like a home straight. And I was in the NCAA, like being the NCAA before, and it's different. I was racing 10K guys, but no one seemed to be able to touch me in a kick. Obviously, racing some 10K guys in America is pretty different to racing the Olympic 6th place finisher. So, but I know coming down that home straight, like I fully believed that I was going to have him. I remember pulling up next to him, and it was, I kind of like stumbled in a pothole, but even then, he's just so strong with that like speed endurance. And I just think that obviously he had the edge with trade. Like he was obviously, this was his like goal of cross country season, and this was kind of like my bonus race. I felt like I'd definitely given it even more of a challenge if I'd trained for running 5K, trained to have a kick against Lareth and not be training for a 10K. So, but either way, it was an absolutely amazing race, and he's an unbelievable athlete. So it was amazing to be able to like push him just like as much as I could.
Do you boys share any words after?
We spoke quite a bit afterwards. He's a lovely guy. I said I'm still coming for him. I'd love to race him again over the track. He's honestly he's an unbelievable talent.
Yeah, was it a good trip as well? Like, obviously, you mentioned that you got to come home afterwards, and were there a few guys on the team who you were mates with before?
Yeah, I knew a couple of guys. Obviously, went to Worlds with a couple of them, and then some of them were new faces. But honestly, those cross country teams, I've always heard they're like the most fun. I can definitely agree they are great fun, and everyone's lovely from the seniors all the way down to like the under 20s. I think I spoke to pretty much everyone, and they're all lovely people. It was an absolutely amazing trip with great fun.
Yeah. Well, few more chances to represent GB this year in 2025. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not even sure it would work thinking about it. But would indoors, the Euros or the Worlds be a possibility?
I tried to ask coach, but he said no. I really wanted to, and I know Ben was also like, if I ran the qualifying time, I'd like to go back, but I just don't think it's possible. We've got some quite big plans for indoors, not just as an individual, but as a team. So I know the main goal is to try and bring that team title back to Tech, considering we've never won a team title in any sport. And so I think indoors we have a massive opportunity on this guy's side to bring the first team title back to Tech is like the main goal this indoor season.
Who's the big scorers? Are you thinking, is it a lot of distance guys? Is it like similar to when Oregon or NAU win a team title and they have 10 guys making finals?
Honestly, we're not. We have like a really good range of we have some really good distance guys. We've got some great throwers, great vaulters, and we've got some good sprinters as well. It's got obviously got Judson, amazing 400 guy, and then we really pretty all rounded. So I think it's going to be obviously winning a team title is always going to be hard. So I think it's going to be really hard, but I think we definitely have an opportunity to do it.
Yeah. And talking of the NCAA, obviously we've mentioned how deep the cross is, that the indoors is obviously just as deep as well. How are you shaping up individually in terms of events? Can you tell us that? Like, are you doubling? Is it DMR and the mile? Are you going in the 3K? What is it?
So obviously the mile is kind of my preferred event, but I think with trying to win a team title, I want to maximize the points that I can provide. I just think running the mile, having heats and finals is just going to be a bit too much. That's what coach is saying. So I think the main goal obviously is trying to anchor the DMR and run the 3K, considering they're on different days and it's just one race each. Obviously everything can change. Like, we'll have to see how the rest of the team runs, because I might not be the best miler to put on the DMR. I might not make the 3K. I might make the mile only. So we'll just see what happens. But I think the main goal is running the 3K and then anchoring the DMR, I think, or running a leg of the DMR. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think that's the goal. I think that's going to maximize my ability to get as many points for the team.
That's cool. I mean, I think already the 3K is something stupid. Is it like last man at 750 or something already?
It'll be around 750, but it's probably going to be like, you're going to have to run I'd say you'd have to run the British under 23 record to make that.
Go on, give it. What is that?
It's 7:42, I think, by Charles.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, goodness. Okay, that's impressive stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty
on
fat.
That, do you think you'll go to Boston? You mentioned it was never in the question in December. Is Ben Thomas anti-Boston? Is that
No, definitely not anti-Boston. We just don't do that. We don't do any races straight after cross. That's
okay.
Finals, and that's just us. So yeah, we'll go to Boston. Whether it will be for an individual event, I don't know. I know we usually go for the DMR. We went last year for the DMR. So I know the whole team is trying to like get him to take us for individual events, but we'll see. Obviously, we have a really nice track here, and we've got some pretty decent people that could be our paces. I think he likes the idea of we don't need to travel all the time to maybe get times, but we'll just see how we're looking after the first opening meet. See if anyone can even get near the times at our track would be pretty nice.
Yeah, from an athlete perspective, is Boston ruining the NCAA a little bit? You know, with I guess if you don't go as a team and like, let's say you miss out on the NCAAs by 1 or 2 spots and 10 guys ahead of you all got their time at Boston. Is that frustrating as an athlete? Is that?
I don't think to me, no. I've run at Boston before. I ran last year in the mile, and Boston did not work for me. I ran like 4:15 in the mile. I had a terrible run. But I think Boston is just, people say it's like this magic track or it's short or whatever. I think it's just the atmosphere and the placebo effect. If you think you're going to run well, and usually if you think you're going to run well, you will run well. And that's how it works. And if you go into every race believing that you're going to run some crazy times, then you probably will run those crazy times wherever you go. I think it just helps that obviously everyone runs fast there and everyone's kind of in the mindset to run fast. But I think you could do that at whatever track you go to. And I don't think it's anything special. I think it's just a big meet, just like Brian plays a big meet in America. I think that they're all just big meets that you can, with the atmosphere, adrenaline, it just helps you run fast. But I think, like I said, you can do that anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Like you mentioned, obviously that the team are kind of pushing Ben to like take you guys out there. How much are you linking in with people like Cole and Cooper in that aspect? Are they kind of saying, "Oh, we want to go here," and are the team going with them? Do you actually see much of those guys at all?
Yeah, we see them a lot, but I doubt we do going to any races with them. But they've hopped in for a couple workouts. I know we did like 2-3 workouts with them, but just before I left, and then I know a couple of the guys did some with them once I left as well. So they're around and they're on pretty similar schedules to us at the moment. But obviously, as we get more into track season, their schedules are going to be completely different to us with whatever they're doing. They join us for some of the workouts, and then I know here they do some pacing for us as well. So yeah, we see them quite often. They're usually in there when we're in there, but sometimes doing either the same thing as us, just at a different time, or completely different things.
You learn anything off those guys yet? I mean,
I've not spoken to them yet, but it's pretty cool to just see them there doing your training. I think that's a pretty cool thing. I remember we were doing a session with them, and it was pretty cool to have the Olympic champion just running next to you in a session. I think that's a very interesting, pretty cool moment.
Absolutely. And obviously, like you said, you prefer that 1500 despite, I guess, me and Matt were kind of talking before, obviously the NCAA performance, is that leaning towards the 5K? But I think you've answered that for us, that you want to kind of follow that 1500 or in the mile out in America.
Yeah, I'll run whatever I'm best at. I think that's the best way to put it. I'll run, if I'm more likely to win the 5K NCAA, I'll run the 5K. If I'm more likely to win the mile, I'll run the mile. But I think it's the one thing that I'm quite lucky with. I've got some pretty good range. I can move from pretty much any. I like to think I can do pretty much anything from the 800 to the 10K. So I just have to see what I run indoors, and then we'll find out what I'm best at. But I know outdoors, I think the main goal this year is going to be the 1500. I just think I have a lot of potential in the 1500. I thought I was more of a 5K guy when I was younger, and then I did 1500 for like last year, and I ran the best track season I've ever had. And then obviously I've come back, had a really good cross season, but I think this track season might even just trump the cross season with running the 1500 and the 3K.
So it's interesting because you have the best track season ever, you do the 1500s. Did you just put more of a focus on it then and just start to, a few more speed workouts and start to see some faster times? Because when you were focusing on the 5 and the 3 as a youngster, presumably that was because at that time you thought that was your better event. So do you think you've now just matured and just sculpted into more of a 1500 athlete just naturally?
I did this lactic testing at Leeds, and basically it came back as it kind of looks like I'm more physiologically suited to the 15. Obviously I was ill when I did it as well, so it kind of messed up my results. They weren't completely accurate, but they were kind of like leaning more towards the fact that I might be a better 1500 runner. And the year that I ran the 5K at Europeans, I ran 2 1500s, and my second run I ran 346. So I was pretty happy with that, and I'd always kind of prided myself on having a pretty good kick. And then I was I was like, oh, well, I'm going to give the 1500 a go this year. And it was like pretty much, this last track season, I just went all in on the 1500. And first of all, I just really enjoyed it. I really love the 1500. I think it's a great event. And then secondly, I just kind of like took to it really well. And just seemed to be working like really well, especially like, I don't think I have the mileage or the maturity just yet to be that good in the 5K. Obviously in the future, I definitely will be running the 5K, but I want to kind of maximize and see what I can do in the 1500. I know I've got definitely some big goals in the 1500 for this track season. I'm really excited.
That's cool. Man, I want to ask you before we finish up, LA 2028, does Cole Hooker defend his title? Do you make the GB team? Here's a fun question. Who makes the GB team in LA 2028 for the 1500? I wonder if Kerr and Whiteman and people like that are on the team in 4 years. A lot can change in 4 years.
I think out of the people who went this year, I think Kerr's the only one that could keep it going, possibly. I don't know. I think George is moving more to the 5K. I think he's just more of an endurance guy. Obviously, like his 5K Europeans is unbelievable, just behind Jakob. I think George might move more to the 5K over the next few years. I think Kerr definitely. I think he could keep going in the 15. Again, like anything could happen in the next 4 years, but that's definitely my goal. I'd definitely like to get on the LA team, but I want to be on some of the world champ teams before that. I know this year I've definitely got my eye on to see if I could possibly get close to that time, and then if I do get that time, then it's anyone's game at the British trials, and especially we take 3 this year, I think, because it automatically goes. Yeah.
You talk about physiology. Do you test that at all at Virginia Tech? And no, I was going to say, because, maybe Ben Thomas looks at you guys and goes, right, yeah, you're pretty similar. Like your makeup compared to Cole's makeup, pretty similar, so you can handle the same workouts. Does he change things a lot on the individual as well? Or does he just have a program and he knows its work and selects the individuals that he knows will work for?
I think in cross, it's kind of like everyone does the same stuff just because we're all training for the same thing. But I know coming into track season, I definitely think it's going to start being more individual and kind of split into groups depending on your event. So yeah, I've obviously not experienced that training just yet. But I think, from what I've heard, it gets more individualized coming into track season. And yeah, I asked him if he wanted me to do get my lactates and all that stuff done when I was at home, and he told me no. So he doesn't seem too bothered by that. I think he's very much just kind of like, he'll watch and figure out how good you are on what event by you racing and training.
Love it. Well, look, George, it's been great to chat to you, mate. And we obviously wish you all the best with indoors and then the summer afterwards. But thanks so much for coming on the pod.
Thank you very much for having me.